let me outline the process of self-inquiry to self-abidance. Now, this process starts with the question, who am I, or what am I, in which we inquire this I that I believe to be. Well, what is it that I refer to when I say I? This I that I've taken myself to be, what is that? Who am I? So it's an inward journey, and this inward journey is really this process that we exclude. So the process that excludes everything that we thought we were our name or our title or our role or our identity or our story, our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations. So all of this is essentially excluded, in which we are isolating this I thought. And we basically hone in on this I thought. And we come to this realization that this I thought, this I that I think that I am, is no more than this thought. And how do I know this? How do I know that it's simply just a thought? Well, what I actually am is what is witnessing this I thought. It's what has isolated it. That this I thought is in the crosshairs. It's in focus, that we've isolated it. And what I actually am is what is watching it. What I actually am is what is witnessing this I thought appear. It's what has isolated it. By looking at all of these other things, which are seen to be temporary, transient, coming and going, appearing and disappearing, through that process of exclusion and separation, we've filtered everything out, leaving just this I thought. And then we come to a direct seeing that this I thought is no more than just a thought. And what I actually am is the awareness that is observing that I thought. So this is the self-inquiry, the path of exclusion that isolates the I thought. Now, where this turns into self-abidance is this awareness, the true I that is revealed, that this I is a thought. The I that you're looking at is a lowercase I, and the I that you are looking from is I with a capital. So the capital I is then looking at the lowercase I, and it's seeing it to be just a thought. Likewise, you can say that it's the I feeling, and we can really feel this sense of I, and it feels more like it's in the body. So we can investigate this I feeling even deeper into the body, this sensation, and really explore that. And we come to the same realization that that sensation is actually the awareness. So the thought is awareness and the sensation is awareness. Therefore, we're seeing through that I thought and that I feeling. And it's the awareness that we are that's actually seeing both the thought and the sensation to not really be what you are. So it's super subtle. Now that this is revealed, then this is what we call self-abidance, that you remain as the pure awareness. And you're not touching any of the other things that you've excluded. You've removed everything that is non-essential, leaving the pure essence, just the awareness. And this is self-abidance. You're abiding as the self. That is what you are, the pure awareness. And you're not touching the thought, you're not touching the sensation, you're not touching the role, you're not touching the identity. And that seems to be something that is more difficult than it sounds to be when I'm explaining it like this. Because what happens is all of those things that were non-essential, all those things that seem to be removed and seem to kind of clear the way, and like you've parted this path and isolated this I thought, and oh, it's just a thought, and oh, it's just a sensation. And now that that's out of the way, there's just the pure awareness. Seems like a walk in the park. But it's not that easy, because after that revelation is made, then the mind comes back into the mix, and it seems to want to invite you back to the illusion, back to the dream. This is where all these thoughts, feelings, old repressed memories and feelings start arising. And it seems like it has this pull. So it's not so easy to simply just abide as what you are, because you're constantly getting now an invitation to say, come on back to the dream and remember me and all of this. And it's very seductive. It's very immersive, captivating, sticky. It feels like there's a pull. And this is because there's still that habitual pattern with identifying as those thoughts. There's these patterns that still have momentum, that you're so used to identifying as a son or a daughter or a father or a mother or whatever those roles may be, or you're still used to believing in the story of the fictional self, that you're still believing to have this past and be moving through time into the future. You still are believing in the goals and aspirations to then achieve happiness in the future. You're still believing the mind when it shows you thoughts. You're still believing the mind when it presents these feelings. You still are believing to be limited and separate. So this is where the self-inquiry turns into self-abidance, and you are simply just abiding as yourself. And what helps you abide as yourself is more exploration. And this is what we do in the group guidance, which really helps you abide as your true nature, is really exploring it. And it has this accumulative effect where the more time you're knowingly abiding as yourself, that's then burning these patterns. It's burning these conditioning patterns. It's you're not feeling the pull as much. This pull starts loosening. The mind's grip starts loosening the more you're abiding as yourself knowingly. And so this is where the self-inquiry really becomes that self-abidance. Whereas what happens is if we just get that glimpse and go, that's it. And it's one of those things that just getting the glimpse can make you actually feel like, whoa, that's it. It's all done. Self-realization. This is it. Walk in the park. Thank you, for guiding me to myself. That seems to only last. It could be a few minutes. It could be a few seconds. It could be actually a couple days or a week. But then what you notice is the mind comes in and it seems to be more powerful than ever. It seems to be like you completely forgotten about being pure awareness, and you go back to the dream, and it's almost like you lost your memory kind of thing. Like you totally forgot what you saw, and it starts feeling like something else now is, controlling. And it's kind of difficult to get back there. You kind of, I kind of remember some sort of experience or something, feeling good. Like, how do I get back there? And it feels like, again, like the open sky of awareness has now been covered by clouds. And now you don't know how to get back there. So that's why there's this practice where what we do is continue that self-inquiry, and we kind of walk back there very often. And you notice that every time you metaphorically walk back to yourself, you're guided back to yourself, it's easier every single time. And every time you come back to yourself, you're able to stay as yourself longer and longer and longer. And that's where these meditations, where we're simply abiding, we're exploring our true nature, you're getting more and more familiar with yourself. The thing is that you're so familiar with the mind that when it comes back into the mix, it's like, remember me, and you're so familiar, you completely forget yourself again. So what happens is when everything is now excluded and it's just self-abidance, then you get really familiar with yourself, so that even when the mind comes back, it's like you're too familiar with what you actually are and you're not buying the bait. The mind will send you the invitation and you're not coming to the party. You're ignoring it. You're not falling for the tricks anymore. And it doesn't seem to have this pull. So it becomes easier to abide as yourself by simply having more frequent visits back, by being guided back and staying as yourself, resting as yourself in these meditations that allow you to get more and more familiar. So that even in these meditations, when you're resting as yourself, you'll find that after the meditation, you're still able to abide to some degree. It won't feel like you're only abiding as yourself in the meditation. It will feel like now after the meditation, you're able to abide a little bit more, a little longer. And it'll start coming up in spontaneous ways in your life where you're able to abide as yourself driving, or you're able to abide as yourself just washing dishes or cutting the grass or washing the car. And it just seems like now this meditation just starts showing up in daily life. And really what needs to happen is then this needs to be 24/7 essentially, that this self-abidance just continues, and it will continue on its own, where it becomes something that you have essentially entered into that self-abidance and you don't leave. You remain in that self-abidance. And when you're experiencing yourself knowingly in meditation, in a formal meditation, as well as just, you could say, ordinary life, when the objects in the world and everything has been reintroduced, even in the presence of the mind and all the mix, and you're not being pulled out and you're not re-identifying with that which you are not, getting identified with the thoughts, getting identified with the feelings, and you're not being that I thought, you're not being that separate self. There's something that just completely dissolves, that I thought, that I feeling is seen through so clearly that it completely melts, it dissolves. And then what remains is simply just self-abidance. And then this then is what is called the natural state, which is not really a state. It's a stateless state, but it would be the highest form of samadhi, which is very natural. And then there's absolutely no effort, where the default is self-abidance. There's no other, it's not possible to not abide as self. There requires some effort at the start, ironically. But it turns into something that's effortless, that this process just goes on its own kind of thing. And then you're just effortlessly abiding as self, and it's experienced as very natural. And this is then the happiness, the love, the peace, the freedom, the fullness, the completeness, the fullness, the wholeness, the rest, the relaxation. This is just the natural. This is what you're experiencing at all times. You're not going in and out and experiencing mind attacks and anything like that. That is experienced at the start. So, like I said, to recap, we walk back, essentially, metaphorically, walk back by excluding everything, hone in, isolate this I thought, this I feeling, investigate that very clearly, which requires some good exploration. Then, when that's seen to not be what you are, but actually what you are is that which is exploring it, Then when that is revealed, then we simply abide as what we are. When the mind comes back in, thoughts and feelings send you invitations. Hey, would you like to come back into the dream? Hey, remember me being a person? Hey, remember the story? And it will give you all of these invitations that are very, like I said, very compelling, very seductive, very almost innocent, and they trick you. So then there's this kind of play, flip-flopping back and forth, step into the duality, back here as myself, let's pretend to be what I'm not. Okay, I'm back to myself. There's this flip-flopping back and forth. What really helps reduce this flip-flopping is going through the self-inquiry again and again and again, where you come back to yourself over and over and over. That seems to be a practice for a little while. And it's like you are coming back faster and faster. You start at the start, you need the guide to guide you back. Then it's almost like, okay, I can do it myself. I know how to get home. Then when you're at home, then it's like, okay, relax. You're at home. Put your feet up on the couch, relax, and get familiar with what this feels like. Get familiar with resting. Get familiar with relaxing. Get familiar with this causeless happiness. Get familiar with silence. Get familiar with the stillness. All of these non-objective qualities that it's really the subject, which you are, that is experiencing itself. Then when everything else is put back into the mix, the mind and all that other stuff, the thoughts, the feelings, after the meditation, then it feels like you're not pulled out as quickly and as often. So we continue coming back to ourself. We continue abiding as ourself in these deep meditations where they're very experiential and exploratory in nature. We explore our true nature, and we get very clear where the clarity is increasing because of the amount of time that we're simply abiding as ourself. And then we're then finding that we're able to abide in ourselves in ordinary life. It starts off with the kind of mundane tasks like cutting the grass and washing the car, driving the car, walking the dog, getting the mail, where there's like nobody that you're interacting with. And then it seems to be a little trickier in those relationships that are like with your parents or brothers and sisters, or the intimate relationships, or in work settings, where that feels like it's sticky, like it feels like you are not abiding as yourself. You're being pulled out, and you totally lose yourself into that, which then that starts dissolving again, rinse and repeat by simply abiding as yourself. Even those strong karmic patterns, even those patterns that are very conditioned, they stop losing that effect. They appear to be losing its power, losing its pull, so that even in those relationships with parents and girlfriend, boyfriend, and your partner, your husband, wife, all of those relationships, then you're not getting pulled out in those situations either. That then there's something at that stage, there's that sense of I, that separateness, that limitation, it's completely dissolved, it's completely melted, and there's no sense of separation, there's no sense of limitation, there's no sense of lack. There's the happiness, there's the love, there's the peace, the freedom, the wholeness, the completeness, the fulfillment, the fullness, the rest, the relaxation. There's no sense of otherness. There's the apparent other, but in those others, you're seeing past the others, and you're not finding any otherness. You're only perceiving yourself. It's pure subjectivity. It's the one. And this is then experienced at all times. You're not in and out. It's permanent. And this would then be liberation, moksha. It would be, it's known as like sahaja samadhi, the highest level of samadhi. It's the natural, fancy word for, it's the natural state. It feels completely natural. And then looking back at everything else, it seems to make sense, but then to only explain to someone to help, kind of get them to that stage. But it's really hard to communicate all of this stuff from that stage. All of this stuff that I'm saying, there's some truth to it, but it sounds a lot like BS too. It's just one of those things where it's completely paradoxical. But it's kind of like all of these steps and how I'm kind of outlining them in stages and levels and different processes and all that stuff. It's kind of like all these steps, like as if you're climbing up a ladder. It's like the ladder to liberation, right? Where you're climbing up these steps on the ladder, and every step is like this level, this stage. But actually, in hindsight, you're seeing that all these stages and levels are actually, they're still within duality. There's still this feeling of evolution, this feeling of progress, this feeling of process, this feeling of stages and levels and depths. At the natural state, that's all seen to be just mind. That there's no levels, there's no steps, there's none of that. It doesn't make sense. But while you're going through it, it definitely makes sense that you need this ladder. But it's like on that last step, it's as if you kick that ladder over and you don't need it because you're at the top. You kick that ladder and you look back and it's like there's no ladder. It doesn't make any sense to you. That being said, the one who's climbing the ladder at the very top disappears. And this is where it's completely paradoxical and hard to talk about. So let's end it there. Hopefully this helps. I'll see you in the next one.